Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The night had fallen thick and heavy over Hogwarts Castle, the moon a pale silver coin half buried in clouds. Down by the edge of the forbidden forest, where mist wound itself like ghostly ribbon among the trees, a lantern swung gently from a massive hand. "Come on, Fang," Hagrid muttered, his deep voice half a growl, half a sigh. "Ain't nothing to worry about, big lad. Just a bit of moonlight and some funny noises, that's all." The boarhound whimpered, tail pressed tight against his legs, nose twitching at the scent of something that didn't belong. Hagrid's lantern light caught the gleam of his wet nose, then flickered against a long gouge carved into a tree trunk. The wood was shredded, clawed deep, far too deep for any acromantula or centaur. Hagrid stopped. The night seemed to hold its breath. He crouched, his giant hands brushing the bark. "Well, that's odd," he murmured. "Ain't seen marks like that since... blimey, I don't even know when." A low wind stirred the branches. It carried with it the scent of something wild, something wrong. He straightened, glancing toward the castle lights far up the hill. Somewhere behind those walls, students were safe in their beds, dreaming of Quidditch, exams, or mischief. Hagrid had been given a simple task by Professor McGonagall herself: check on the unicorns. They'd been wandering close to the forest's edge these past few nights, and one hadn't come back at all. "Just make sure everything's all right, Hagrid," she had said in her brisk Scottish tone. "If the Ministry catches wind that something's prowling near the grounds, they'll be here before sunrise. And that's the last thing we need." Now, looking at the deep claw marks, Hagrid had a sinking feeling this wasn't just something prowling. He moved deeper into the trees, the lantern swinging low. The forest swallowed sound the farther he went. No chirp of insect, no flap of wing, only the soft thud of his boots and Fang's uneasy panting broke the silence. Then came a faint glow between the trees, not the silvery shimmer of unicorns, but something dimmer, colder, a soft blue radiance like moonlight on glass. Hagrid squinted. What in Merlin's beard? He stepped closer. The glow came from the ground, no, from the body of a unicorn, lying still among the ferns. Its coat, normally radiant white, was streaked with black veins, as if the life had been drawn out through its very skin. "Oh no." Hagrid knelt beside it, eyes full of sorrow. "Who'd do such a thing?" He reached out, but before his fingers could touch the creature, the light dimmed completely, and the silence grew colder still. Then from the shadows beyond came a sound like air being torn apart, a low hiss. Fang bolted, leash snapping free from Hagrid's hand. "Fang!" Hagrid shouted, stumbling to his feet. "Get back here!" But even as he called, his eyes locked on the darkness where the hiss had come from. Two pinpricks of green light hovered there, eyes gleaming with something that was not hunger but malice. "All right then," Hagrid said under his breath, reaching for his crossbow. "Let's see what ye are." But before he could take aim, the lights vanished. The night closed again, leaving only the faint rustle of something vast retreating deeper into the forest. Hagrid stood still for a long time, heart thudding beneath his thick coat. He knew every inch of this forest, every beast and burrow, every glade and thicket, but this was something else, something ancient. He leaned down, examined the soil where the unicorn lay. There were footprints, massive, almost feline, but too long, too heavy, and beside them scorch marks. Not fire, something darker. When Hagrid finally turned back toward his hut, Fang was waiting at the tree line, whining softly. "Come on, boy," Hagrid said, his voice quiet now. "We're telling the headmistress. There's something in these woods, and I reckon it ain't one of mine." He glanced once more into the forest before leaving. The mist seemed thicker now, curling around the trees like smoke. Somewhere in its depths something moved, slow, deliberate, unseen, and from far, far away, deeper than the centaurs dared to wander, came a single echoing roar that made the very leaves tremble. Hagrid froze. Then, after a long moment, he whispered, "Blimey, what have you gone and woken up now?" The forest gave no answer, only the sigh of the wind through its endless branches and the faint shimmer of blue light dying among the ferns. The next morning, Hogwarts would awaken to fog so thick it swallowed the castle grounds, but by then Hagrid would already be gone, back into the forest, lantern in hand, to hunt the truth of what had stirred in the dark, for he knew one thing above all. Some creatures in the Forbidden Forest should never be woken, and this one, whatever it was, wasn't just dangerous, it was furious. The morning broke cold and gray over the castle. A shroud of fog drifted across the grounds, muffling the shouts of early rising students and dimming the sparkle of the lake. Hagrid's hut stood at the edge of it all, lantern still burning faintly in the window. As though he hadn't slept at all, he sat by the hearth, massive shoulders bent, staring into a cup of tea gone cold. Fang lay by the door, eyes half shut but ears twitching at every sound from the forest. There came a sharp knock. Hagrid rose with a grunt and opened the door to find Professor McGonagall standing there, her tartan cloak drawn tight against the chill. "Good morning, Hagrid," she said briskly. "You were out late last night, I believe?" Hagrid nodded gravely. "Found something, Professor. Not good news, I'm afraid. One of the unicorns, dead." Her expression changed in an instant, the faintest flicker of alarm breaking through her composure. "A unicorn? Are you certain?" "Aye," Hagrid said. Drained it was, like the life had been pulled right out of it. And there were claw marks, big ones, nothing I've seen before. McGonagall stepped inside, eyes narrowing. Could it be a werewolf? Hagrid shook his head. "No, ma'am. Too big. Too clever, too. It was watching me. Eyes like green fire. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then she said quietly, 'I shall inform the ministry. But for now, we keep this quiet. The last thing we need is panic among the students.'" "Aye," Hagrid said, though his heart sank. Once the ministry got involved, it'd mean chains, spells, and possibly worse, for whatever creature lurked in the forest. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Be careful, Hagrid. If this is something ancient, you may be dealing with magic older than Hogwarts itself." After she left, Hagrid sat back down heavily. "Older than Hogwarts," he muttered. "That's a cheerful thought." By noon, he was back in the forest. The mist clung to the ground, cool and wet. He carried his crossbow slung across his back, a bag of meat scraps in one hand and the other resting on Fang's head. They walked for nearly an hour before Hagrid found what he was looking for: tracks. Huge, clawed, pressed deep into the mud, and alongside them strange patterns like scales dragged through the earth. "Big beastie," Hagrid murmured, "but no acromantula nor dragon neither. What are ye?" A sudden rustling in the brush made him whirl, bow raised, but it was only a figure in dark robes, stepping cautiously through the fog. "Blimey, you gave me a fright," Hagrid said, lowering the bow. "You must be Alaric Dawes, eh? Auror from the Ministry?" The young wizard nodded. He was lean, sharp-eyed, with a wand always half raised. "Head Mistress McGonagall said you might need assistance." "Assistance, is it?" Hagrid grunted. "I can handle myself, thank you very much. But if ye insist, ye can follow me. Keep your wand ready, though. Something nasty's out here." As they moved deeper, Dawes said little, though his gaze swept the shadows constantly. Hagrid had met plenty of Ministry men before, but this one seemed different. Not cold exactly, but wary, like someone who'd seen too much. "Tell me, Hagrid," Dawes said after a while. "You've been Keeper of Keys here a long time. Ever heard of anything that matches this creature's signs?" Hagrid hesitated. "Once or twice. Old stories, told by the centaurs. Something they called a nunduin. Said it were born when a nundu and a basilisk met in the wild centuries ago. Breath of death, eyes that drive men mad. But that's all legend. Can't be real." The Auror's face hardened. "Legends start somewhere." They came at last to a clearing where the air felt strange, thicker somehow, almost humming. The trees around it were blackened, as though scorched from within. In the center lay another unicorn, still and pale as snow. Dawes knelt beside it, wand light flickering over the wound. "Same marks, drained again." Hagrid frowned. "And look there, those scorch lines. Seen anything like it before?" The Auror didn't answer. His wand moved slowly in the air, tracing faint symbols that glowed blue. "There's spell residue here. Dark magic and recent. Someone's been summoning things they shouldn't." "Summoning?" Hagrid repeated. "So this beast wasn't born here?" "Looks that way," Dawes said grimly. "And if someone brought it here deliberately..." He looked toward the castle, his expression darkening. "We may have more to worry about than just the creature." A twig snapped. Both men froze. Fang gave a low growl, fur bristling. The fog stirred, and out of it came a shape that made Hagrid's breath catch. It was vast, feline in form, but scaled like a dragon. Its eyes glowed green, its breath misted black, and every step it took left the ground scorched. The Nunduin. Dawes raised his wand. "Protego." The shield flared just in time. A blast of dark air struck it, crackling like lightning, and the Auror staggered back. Hagrid stepped forward, shouting, "No, don't hurt it, it's scared." But the creature was not scared, it was enraged. It reared, loosing a hiss that rattled the trees, and the air around it shimmered with poison. "Run!" Hagrid bellowed. "Get back to the castle!" "I don't run," Dawes snapped, but even as he spoke, the beast lunged. Hagrid swung his crossbow, firing a bolt that struck the ground near its claws. The creature roared, turning its fury on him. Its tail whipped through the air, smashing a tree in two. "Easy now," Hagrid called, holding out his hands. "Ain't gonna hurt ya. Just calm down, you great beauty." For a heartbeat, the creature paused, nostrils flaring. Its gaze met his, ancient and terrible. Hagrid felt something press against his mind. An image, not words, but a memory. Chains, fire, and a voice whispering spells. "Blimey," he breathed. "Someone made Ye come here." Then, as quickly as it appeared, the image vanished, and the beast turned and bounded into the forest with a roar that shook the earth. Dawes stared after it, pale-faced. "It's intelligent," he said quietly. "It wanted us to see that." Hagrid nodded slowly. Aye, and that means it ain't just dangerous, it's suffering. As the forest grew silent again, the two men stood among the ruined trees, and Hagrid's heart grew heavy. Something dark was at work in the Forbidden Forest, and whatever had brought the Nunduin here, it wasn't finished yet. He looked toward the castle, where the fog curled around the towers like smoke, and muttered, "Best we get ready, Fang. Things are about to get a lot worse." And somewhere far behind them, deep in the mists, came the low, mournful cry of a creature that should never have existed, calling not in rage this time, but in sorrow. The following days passed in a hush of tension that settled over Hogwarts like a veil. Rumors rippled among the students of strange lights in the forest, the absence of unicorns, and the faint rumble of something moving in the fog. Professor McGonagall kept the truth hidden as best she could, but Hagrid could see the worry in her eyes each time their paths crossed. He spent his nights patrolling the forest edge, lantern in hand, Fang at his heel, and his crossbow slung across his back. He knew the Nunduin was still out there. He could feel it, a heavy presence, like a heartbeat pulsing through the trees. Yet for all his searching, he saw no sign of it. On the fourth night, Dawes returned to his hut. The young Auror looked weary, his cloak damp with mist. "I've traced the magical residue," he said, placing a small pouch on Hagrid's table. "It's the same dark energy near both unicorn sites. It's not random. It's forming a pattern." "A pattern?" Hagrid frowned, pouring him a cup of tea. "Like what sort of pattern?" Dawes spread a scrap of parchment across the table. It was covered in runes and lines drawn in a careful hand. "The energy converges here," he said, pointing to a spot deep in the heart of the Forbidden Forest, near the ruins of the old Druid Circle. If the creature was summoned, that's where it happened. Hagrid rubbed his beard thoughtfully. "That's centaur ground, that is. They won't take kindly to us wandering there." "Then we'll have to be careful," Dawes said grimly, "because whoever summoned that thing might still be in there." The next evening, under a sky bruised with storm clouds, the two men set out once more. The forest was restless. Even the trees seemed to whisper as they passed, branches shifting like fingers in the dark. They walked for hours until the path opened into a clearing lit by strange pale fire. Stones, ancient and moss-covered, stood in a circle. Symbols glowed faintly along their sides. Runes older than English, older than Hogwarts itself. "Merlin's beard," Hagrid breathed. "Ain't no wizard been here in centuries." "Not true," came a voice from the shadows. Hagrid and Dawes spun around. A figure stepped from the darkness. A young girl, maybe 15, her robes torn and her eyes gleaming fever bright. She clutched a wand to her chest, and Hagrid recognized her instantly. "Clara Finch," he said, aghast. "You're one of the 5th years. What in blazes are you doing out here?" Her expression flickered between defiance and fear. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "I only wanted to see it, to prove I could do something great." "Prove?" Dawes said sharply. "You summoned that creature?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to work. The spell was in an old book, in the library's restricted section. It said it would call a guardian spirit. I thought it could protect the forest from hunters. But it wasn't a spirit, it was that thing." Hagrid's heart twisted. "Oh, lass, you meddled with summoning magic. That's no place for a student." "I tried to stop it," she said, voice trembling. "But it wouldn't listen. It's bound to me now. It feels what I feel. When I'm afraid, it gets angry. Dawes' face went pale. Then you're the key. The creature's not loose, it's tethered to her emotions. If she loses control, it does too. Before Hagrid could speak, the ground shuddered. A roar split the air, shaking the stones. The trees bent as a wave of dark mist rolled through the clearing. The Nunduin had come. It emerged from the fog, immense and terrible, its green eyes fixed not on Hagrid or Dawes, but on Clara. The girl stepped back, trembling. "No, please, I didn't mean it," the creature hissed, its breath blackening the grass. "Clara, listen to me," Hagrid shouted. "It's not evil, it's frightened. You called it here, so only you can calm it." "I can't," she cried. "It hates me." Dawes raised his wand, but Hagrid caught his arm. "No spells. You'll only make it worse." The Auror's jaw clenched. "Then what do you suggest?" "Trust her," Hagrid said simply. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt anything. I just wanted to protect them, the unicorns, the centaurs, all of it. Please, I'm sorry." For a long, terrible moment, the Nunduin stared at her. Then slowly it lowered its head. The green glow faded to a dull gold, and its breath stopped steaming. It took one heavy step toward her, then another, until it stood before the trembling girl. She reached out a shaking hand and laid it against the creature's snout. "It's all right," she whispered. "You're free now." A hum filled the clearing. The runes on the stones began to glow brighter, their light weaving into the air like threads of silk. Then, with a sound like a sigh, the creature dissolved into mist, vanishing into the night. The silence that followed was almost holy. Clara fell to her knees, sobbing with exhaustion. Hagrid hurried to her side, laying a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Easy now, lass. It's over." But Dawes was still scanning the circle, frowning. "No," he said softly. "It's not. That wasn't the creature disappearing. It was retreating. It's still here, somewhere in the forest. The summoning wasn't broken. It was transferred." "Transferred?" Hagrid frowned. "To who?" The Auror looked at Clara, his voice low. "To the one who stood nearest the circle when it released." Clara's sobs faded. She looked up slowly at Hagrid. A chill passed through him, though the night was still. For the first time he felt something strange, a pulse, faint but real, in the back of his mind, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. "Ah," he muttered softly, realization dawning. "Well, that ain't good." The wind stirred through the clearing again, carrying with it the faint echo of a roar. Distant now, but familiar, the bond had passed to him. Somewhere deep within the forest, the Nunduin waited, not as an enemy, but as something else, something bound to the half-giant who had pitied it. And Hagrid, staring into the mist, felt a strange certainty settle in his chest. The creature was calling to him, and soon he would have to answer. The next morning dawned sullen and heavy, the sky the color of pewter. A storm brewed over the forbidden forest, and its winds carried whispers that made even the castle's portraits shiver in their frames. Students murmured in corridors about thunder that sounded like roaring beasts, but the professors dismissed it as weather. Only McGonagall knew the truth, and Hagrid, who sat silent at his table, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glow of those ancient runes, heard the hum of that spell, and felt that alien heartbeat echo inside his chest. It was still there now, a faint thrum beneath his ribs, slow, patient, and aware. Fang whimpered at his feet. I know, lad," Hagrid muttered. I feel it too. A knock came at the door. Dawes stepped in, his cloak dripping from the rain. You haven't answered my Patronus all morning. I was starting to think the beast had eaten you. Hagrid managed a grunt that might have been a laugh. No such luck. It's quiet now. Too quiet. The Auror's eyes flicked to the window, where rain streaked against the glass. McGonagall wants an update, and she's not the only one. The Department of Magical Creatures sent word they're preparing to close the forest if this thing isn't contained. Close the forest? Hagrid thundered, slamming his mug down so hard the table shook. They can't do that. Half the creatures will be trapped, or worse, hunted. I don't like it either, Dawes said, lowering his voice. But if they send in the hit wizards, you won't be able to stop them. Hagrid's fists clenched. The last time the Ministry had interfered in his forest, it had ended in chains and misunderstandings. He would not see it happen again. After a long silence, he muttered, "It ain't gone." "I can feel it, Dawes. In me. Like it's waiting." The Auror studied him carefully. "You said the bond transferred when the spell broke?" "Aye," Hagrid said. "Feels like it's in me mind. Not talking, not thinking words exactly, but it's there." Dawes frowned. "That's dangerous, Hagrid. If it's linked to you, then your emotions could trigger it. Anger, fear, anything could call it back." "Well," Hagrid said with a grim smile, "guess I'll have to keep myself calm then, eh?" But calm was the last thing he felt. That night the storm broke in earnest. Lightning flashed over the castle, thunder rolling across the grounds. Hagrid couldn't stay indoors. He grabbed his lantern, pulled on his moleskin coat, and strode out into the rain. Fang howled in protest, but followed all the same. The forest greeted them like a living thing, branches tossing, wind shrieking through the canopy. Every flash of lightning revealed brief glimpses of movement, centaurs galloping between trees, bowstrings drawn, thestrals lifting their heads toward the storm. The whole forest was awake. Hagrid stopped when he reached the old druid circle again. The stones glistened with rain, but faint traces of rune light still flickered across them. He knelt in the mud, heart pounding. "I know ye can hear me," he said softly. "I can feel ye. Ya don't have to hide." The storm answered with a crack of thunder that shook the ground. The wind whipped his hair into his eyes, and then, in the space between lightning flashes, he saw it, huge and half-transparent, like mist given form. The Nunduin, its outline rippled as though caught between worlds. Its eyes glowed faintly gold now, not the venomous green they had once been. "I ain't your enemy," Hagrid said, rising slowly. "You were brought here against your will. I know what that's like." The creature lowered its massive head, and for a heartbeat Hagrid thought he felt its thoughts again. Images, impressions, chains, fire, and then freedom, confusion, fear. "I'm sorry, mate," Hagrid murmured. "She didn't know what she was doing. But we'll fix it. We'll find a place for you." The Nunduin tilted its head as if it understood. Then without sound, it turned and melted back into the darkness. Hagrid stood alone in the rain for a long time, his heart hammering. He could feel its presence fading deeper into the forest, but not gone. Never gone. When he returned to his hut, Dawes was waiting by the fire. "You found it again, didn't you?" he said quietly. Hagrid nodded. "It's still in the forest, but it ain't attacking. It knows me now." "That's exactly what worries me," the Auror said grimly. "It's tethered to you. If it trusts you, it might obey. But if it feels threatened, it could destroy everything." Before Hagrid could answer, a blinding flash lit the window, followed by a roar, not of thunder but of agony. The very walls trembled. Fang barked wildly. They rushed outside. Over the treetops, a burst of green fire rose like a beacon. Something was happening near the lake. "Students!" Dawes shouted. "They must have wandered too close." They ran, branches whipping past, until the forest opened onto the lake shore. There, amid the storm, 3 figures in Hogwarts cloaks stood frozen in terror. Before them loomed the Nunduin, fully formed now, no longer half mist. It reared, eyes blazing, its breath turning the air black. Hagrid's voice boomed over the wind. "Get back to the castle." The students fled. Hagrid turned to the creature. "Stop. I don't want to hurt anyone." But the beast's rage wasn't its own. It was his. His fear for the students, his anger at the ministry, his frustration, all of it had poured through the bond. The Nunduin mirrored it, magnified it until it roared with his fury. Dawes raised his wand. "Hagrid, you have to break the connection." "Don't you dare," Hagrid bellowed. "You'll kill it." He stepped forward, rain pounding against him, until he stood just beneath the creature's towering head. "It's me you're angry at," he said softly. "Not them. Look at me, big fella. Look at me." The Nunduin's gaze fixed on him. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the glow in its eyes dimmed, and it let out a low, shuddering sound, half growl, half sigh. Hagrid reached out a hand. "That's it. Easy now. We'll sort this out together." The creature lowered its head. Lightning flashed behind them, turning the scene to silver. Then slowly, the beast began to dissolve once more, vanishing into mist that drifted toward the forest. When it was gone, Hagrid fell to his knees, exhausted. Dawes hurried to his side. "You did it," he said in disbelief. "You calmed it." Hagrid shook his head. "No, I only borrowed its peace for a moment. But it's bound to me now, and as long as I'm breathing, it'll feel what I feel." Dawes stared at him. "That means you're the only one who can control it." "Aye," Hagrid said quietly, looking toward the dark line of the trees. "And the only one who can stop it if things go wrong." The storm began to ease, and the first hints of dawn touched the horizon. But neither man spoke again. Both knew this was far from over, somewhere deep in the forest, unseen and waiting. The Nunduin's eyes opened once more, watchful, patient, and forever tied to the half-giant who had set it free. The rain ended by morning, but the world it left behind felt hollow, as if the storm had stripped the color from the earth. Mist clung to the hollows of the forbidden forest, whispering against the ground like breath. Hagrid had not slept again. Sleep felt too dangerous now. Whenever he drifted near it, strange images filled his mind. Eyes like burning emeralds, a heartbeat that echoed through his skull, a voice that wasn't a voice whispering his name through the dark. The bond was growing stronger. He busied himself in his hut, though his hands trembled as he worked. Buckets of dragon feed, crates of puffskeins, anything to keep his mind away from the forest. Fang followed him from corner to corner, uneasy, whining at shadows that weren't there. At noon, Dawes returned, his boots caked with mud. He looked as though he hadn't slept either. "The ministry's sending inspectors," he said without preamble. "They'll be here by nightfall. Magical Beast Control Unit." Hagrid's stomach sank. "Oh, not them lot again," he muttered. "Last time they came, they near burned half the forest, trying to catch an acromantula that didn't even exist." Dawes's tone was grim. "They've been told a creature of unknown classification attacked students. They won't take chances." If they see the Nunduin, they'll strike to kill." "They won't find it," Hagrid said, though his voice lacked conviction. "It's deep in the forest now." The Auror hesitated. "You said it feels what you feel, correct?" Hagrid nodded. "Then if it senses your fear when the inspectors arrive..." Dawes didn't finish the sentence, but Hagrid understood. "I'll keep calm," he said firmly. "For its sake?" By evening, the first ministry carriage rattled down the muddy path to Hagrid's hut. Out stepped 3 witches and a wizard, all in dark green cloaks embroidered with the golden insignia of the Beast Division. Their leader, a severe-looking woman with narrow eyes, introduced herself curtly. "Inspector Thalia Rowe," she said. "We'll require your full cooperation, Mr. Hagrid. The headmistress has instructed us to act with discretion, but if this creature poses a danger to the students..." "It don't," Hagrid interrupted, bristling. "Not unless provoked." Her lips thinned. "We'll be the judges of that." The team spread out toward the forest edge, wands drawn, spells of detection murmured under their breath. Hagrid followed reluctantly, Fang padding beside him. Dawes walked close behind, whispering, "If it senses your agitation, it might come." "I ain't agitated," Hagrid growled through clenched teeth, though his heart pounded. The forest grew darker as they entered. Rainwater dripped from the branches, and the smell of damp earth hung heavy. The inspectors moved methodically, marking symbols on trees, casting containment wards. Then one of them, a young wizard near the rear, gave a sudden cry. "Over here!" They rushed to him. In the mud lay a huge, half-melted footprint. 3 claws, scorched around the edges. Rowe knelt, eyes gleaming with excitement. "This is it. Fresh." Hagrid's breath caught. His heart began to thunder, and the world seemed to tilt. In the distance, somewhere unseen, something stirred in answer. "Stop," Hagrid said hoarsely. "Don't move any closer." Rowe ignored him. She raised her wand, casting a flare that burst through the trees. The light scattered and revealed a shape moving in the mist. The Nunduin. It materialized soundlessly, rising from the fog like a mountain from cloud. Its eyes glowed gold, but within that gold flickered a pulse of red, the color of fear and fury. "Hold your fire," Dawes shouted, but it was too late. One of the inspectors panicked and loosed a spell. The blast struck a nearby tree, and the forest erupted with noise, branches cracking, birds shrieking, Fang barking madly. The creature roared. The sound ripped through the forest. Like a physical blow, Hagrid stumbled forward, shouting, "Stop! Leave it be!" Rowe raised her wand again, but before she could strike, a gust of black wind hurled her backward. The others scattered. The Nunduin's form shimmered between solid and mist, its claws gouging deep scars into the earth. Hagrid forced himself to move closer, his voice booming over the chaos. "Listen to me. You're not in danger. I'm here." The beast turned its great head toward him. For an instant their eyes met, and the bond flared to life. He saw what it saw, men with wands, fire and chains, pain seared into memory, and beneath it all, fear. It wasn't rage that drove it. It was terror. "I won't let them hurt you," Hagrid whispered, "but you have to stop." The Nunduin hesitated. The red glow faded, but the inspectors were regrouping, preparing to cast again. Dawes shouted something Hagrid couldn't hear. Hagrid did the only thing he could think of. He stepped between the creature and the ministry wizards, arms outstretched. "You'll have to go through me first." The inspectors froze. The Nunduin stood motionless behind him, its breath warm and foul with smoke. For a long, dreadful moment, no one moved. Then Dawes stepped forward, wand lowered. "Enough," he said quietly to the others. "Can't you see? It's responding to him. He's controlling it." Ro's face was white. "That thing cannot be controlled. Look at it." But the Nunduin was no longer snarling. Its massive form sank slowly to the ground, mist curling around its limbs. Its eyes dimmed to a soft amber, and its breathing steadied. Hagrid took a step backward, resting one hand on its scaled neck. "See? Ain't no monster," he said softly. "Just a creature out of place." The storm's last drops pattered down through the leaves. In that strange silence, even the inspectors seemed to forget their fear. Finally, Ro spoke again, voice hard but subdued. "You'll take full responsibility for it, Hagrid. If there's even one more incident—" "There won't be," Hagrid said firmly. When they finally withdrew, Dawes lingered behind. "That was madness," he said quietly, "standing between it and their wands. You could have been killed." Hagrid looked up at the canopy, where faint stars glimmered between the branches. "Could have been," he admitted, "but that beast ain't evil, Dawes. It's just lost, and I reckon I know how that feels." The Auror was silent for a long while. Then he said, "So what happens now?" Hagrid sighed, rubbing the mud from his hands. "Now? I find a place for it. Somewhere far enough from the castle that no one will come looking, somewhere it can rest." As they turned back toward the hut, the forest seemed to breathe easier. The mist lifted a little, and a faint silver light broke through the clouds. Behind them, deep among the trees, two golden eyes watched their departure, not angry, not afraid, but waiting. And though Hagrid did not look back, he felt the faint echo of a thought that was not his own, gentle as a whisper. "Friend." He smiled into the dark. "Aye," he said softly to the unseen forest. "Friend it is then." The storm had passed, but the tale of Hagrid and the creature of the forbidden forest was only beginning its next chapter, for bonds born in magic and mercy do not fade. They grow, and sometimes they change the fate of worlds. For several days after the storm, the forbidden forest slept uneasily. Its beasts, centaurs, unicorns, and acromantulas alike, kept to the shadows, whispering among themselves in voices older than language. Even the trees seemed to listen, their leaves trembling though there was no wind. Something had changed within their realm, and they could feel it. Hagrid moved quietly among them, lantern low, Fang padding close at his heel. He had told Professor McGonagall that the danger was past, that the creature had been calmed, contained. But that was not true. The Nunduin still lived. It still lingered in the deeper reaches of the forest, half spirit, half flesh, bound to him by a magic older than any ministry could unmake. He felt it sometimes when he closed his eyes, the brush of scales, the slow rhythm of another heart beating alongside his own. It frightened him at first, that closeness, but as the days passed, he began to understand it. The creature's mind was vast, ancient, but lonely. It had been dragged into this world by pain and command. Now it wanted only to rest. Still, there were others who would not let it. One evening, as dusk spread violet through the treetops, Hagrid heard the centaurs before he saw them, hooves like drums on wet earth, voices low and grave. A tall chestnut centaur emerged from the mist, Firenze, his blue eyes gleaming like starlight. Behind him stood two others, weapons slung across their backs. "Hagrid," said Firenze, bowing his head slightly, "you walk dangerous ground." "Evenin', Firenze," Hagrid said, inclining his head. "Ain't meanin' to stir trouble. Just checking the wards. The centaur's gaze flicked toward the forest's heart. The wards you speak of no longer hold. Something old moves beneath the roots. The stars tell us that it was not born of this world, and that its coming has torn the balance. Hagrid's grip tightened on his lantern. It ain't evil, just lost. Lost things can still destroy, Ferenzi said softly. The herd is restless. Bane calls for its death. Bane never liked much of anything, Hagrid muttered. Tell him to leave it be. I'll handle it. Ferenzi looked at him for a long moment, then said, The creature is tied to you, half-giant. Your fates are woven. If one falls, the other shall not stand. He turned and vanished into the mist, leaving Hagrid alone with that echo in his ears. If one falls, the other shall not stand. That night Hagrid could not rest. The forest was too quiet and the air too heavy. He sat by the fire, Fang asleep at his feet, when the knock came at his door. Dawes entered, rain dripping from his cloak. His expression was drawn. There's been another incident, he said. Hagrid's heart sank. Not the students again? No, the centaurs. One of them, Bane, was attacked near the southern glade. He claims it was the beast. Impossible, Hagrid said at once. It wouldn't. Not unless provoked. Dawes's eyes met his. Bane swears it spoke to him in his mind before striking. He says it called him intruder. Hagrid stared into the fire, the light flickering in his eyes. It weren't the creature. It was defending itself. Maybe, Dawes said quietly. But if this continues, McGonagall will have no choice but to let the Ministry act. Hagrid rose abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. Then I'll end it before they do. I'll send it away myself. How? I don't know yet, Hagrid said, pulling on his coat. But I'll find a way. He left before dawn, guided only by the faint tug in his chest, where the bond pulsed like a second heart. It led him deep, farther than he had ever gone, to a part of the forest where even the centaurs dared not tread. The air grew colder, older. Moss covered the trees like frost, and the ground was slick with strange silver lichen. At last, he reached a clearing ringed by stones that hummed softly when he approached. In the center lay the Nunduin, vast and still, its body half dissolved into mist. Its eyes opened as he stepped forward, amber now, not gold, not green. Calm, curious. Hagrid dropped to one knee. I can't keep ye here, he said softly. They'll come after ye again, and this time they'll mean it. You've got to go. The creature tilted its head, and he felt a thought brush his mind. Where? Anywhere safe, Hagrid said. The mountains, the sea, anywhere far from wizards. Another thought tinged with sorrow. You are my anchor. Hagrid's throat tightened. Aye, well, anchors can let go, can't they? You don't belong here. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The bond couldn't be broken by will alone. It ran deeper, woven through blood and breath. If one went, the other must follow. The Nunduin's gaze softened, and an image formed in his mind. Hagrid standing at the forest's edge, watching it vanish into light. Then darkness, separation. It was willing to go, but it wanted his blessing. He swallowed hard. All right then. Go if you can. Be free. The creature rose, its body blazing with soft gold. The runes on the surrounding stones flared, filling the clearing with a light that banished all shadow. Hagrid stumbled back, shielding his eyes. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glow collapsed inward and vanished. He stood alone in silence, the air heavy with the scent of ozone. The forest around him exhaled, its tension easing like a long-held breath. But when Hagrid touched his chest, he felt only one heartbeat, his own. The second was gone. He smiled sadly. "Goodbye, old friend." He turned to leave, then froze. A sound drifted through the trees, faint but distinct, a scream. Not the cry of a beast, but human. He ran toward it, crashing through brush, until he burst into a smaller glade and stopped dead. Fang whimpered behind him. At the center of the clearing stood Bane, blood streaking his flank, his bow shattered. And beside him something shimmered. A shape, not of flesh, but smoke. The Nunduin's ghostly form hovered there, its eyes black and endless. Hagrid's mind reeled. The creature hadn't gone. It had split. The part bound to him was gone, freed, but something darker remained. The shadow of its rage. Bane staggered, lifting his spear. "It hunts all who enter," he rasped. "Your creature has left its curse behind." The Nunduin shadow turned its gaze toward Hagrid, and though it bore no face, he felt the hatred in it, the remnant of the pain it had suffered, the part that could not forgive. "Oh no," Hagrid breathed. "No, no, no." He raised his crossbow, but the shadow lunged faster than thought. Its mist-like claws tore through the air, striking a tree with a force that sent splinters flying. Hagrid ducked, dragging Bane aside. "Run!" he shouted. "Get out of here!" The centaur hesitated only a moment, then fled. Hagrid turned back, heart pounding. The shadow loomed over him, writhing, its form shifting like smoke caught in flame. For the first time, Hagrid truly understood what the Nunduin had been, a creature born of two worlds, half light, half dark. He had freed the light, but the darkness still lingered, hungry and unbound. He squared his shoulders. "All right then," he said under his breath. "Looks like it's just you and me now." Lightning flashed above the trees as the shadow lunged and the forest trembled with the sound of their clash. The beginning of a new battle that would decide whether the forbidden forest would know peace or fall forever into darkness. The sky was iron gray above the treetops, bruised with thunder that refused to break. Hagrid stood in the clearing, crossbow in hand, as the Nunduin's shadow circled him like smoke given thought. It moved with a predator's grace, its body flickering in and out of substance. Every breath it took chilled the air, and where its claws grazed the ground, moss turned black. "Easy now," Hagrid murmured, though his heart thundered like a drum in his chest. "I ain't gonna hurt ya." The shadow hissed, a sound like stone grinding against bone. It wasn't the creature he'd known, the gentle mind that had shown him its memories of chains and fire. This thing was only what had been left behind. Fury, grief, the unhealed scar of its summoning. The wind rose, tossing his hair into his eyes. Fang barked from behind a fallen log, hackles raised, but Hagrid barely heard him. All his focus was on the beast before him. "You don't have to fight," he said softly. "Your other half's gone, free now. You can be free too." The shadow paused. Its form quivered, shifting between the outlines of claws, fangs, and wings. For an instant, he thought he saw the faintest flicker of gold in its eyes. Memory, maybe, or sorrow. Then the black returned, and the ground split as its talons struck. Hagrid dove aside just in time. The earth where he'd stood cracked open, smoke pouring from it like steam from a cauldron. He rolled, mud smearing his coat, and raised his crossbow. "Sorry, mate," he muttered, "but I can't let you hurt anyone." He fired. The bolt shot through the creature's mist-like chest and passed harmlessly out the other side. The Nunduin shadow howled, not from pain but fury. It lunged. The blow caught him squarely in the shoulder, sending him crashing into a tree. Pain blossomed like fire down his arm, but he forced himself up again, teeth gritted. So that's how it's going to be, eh? He reached into his pouch, fingers closing around a small vial Dawes had given him days earlier, a concentrated charm of containment, meant for magical beasts. He'd hoped never to use it, but desperate times. He hurled it to the ground. Blue light erupted, forming a ring around the creature. The shadow shrieked, its form flickering violently. For a moment the light seemed to hold, but then, with a thunderous crack, the spell shattered. The backlash sent Hagrid sprawling, his lantern bursting in a flare of sparks. He scrambled to his knees, coughing, as the creature's shape wavered and grew. It was no longer a single shadow, but many, splitting and reforming like smoke in a storm. Then came a voice from the trees. "Down!" A bolt of silver light struck the clearing. Dawes burst through the brush, wand blazing, eyes wild. "Protego Maxima!" he shouted, and a dome of shimmering force sprang up around them. The shadows slammed against it, roaring in fury. "Merlin's beard!" Hagrid gasped. "What are you doing here?" Following the tremor, Dawes snapped. The whole forest felt it. The Auror's face was pale in the light of his shield, but his eyes burned with focus. "That's not your creature anymore, Hagrid. It's pure energy, dark magic given form. You can't reason with it." "There's gotta be a way," Hagrid insisted. "It ain't just evil, it's hurt." "You don't understand," Dawes said, his voice harsh. "That thing's tied to your magic now. Every moment it exists, it's feeding on you." Hagrid hesitated. He could feel it faintly, the weight in his chest, the drain of strength. His connection to the Nunduin was pulling him apart, light and shadow both demanding something from him he could not give. "If I end it," he began. "You might die," Dawes finished. Hagrid gave a grim smile. "Worth a try?" He stepped past the shield before Dawes could stop him. The barrier rippled as he passed through, and at once the shadow lunged. He didn't fight back. Not this time. Instead, he closed his eyes and reached inward, searching for the faint golden thread that had once tied him to the true Nunduin. The light half, the one that had known mercy. "Come on," he whispered under his breath. "If there's any good left in you, show me." For a long heartbeat, there was only wind and darkness. Then somewhere deep inside, he felt warmth, a flicker of that same calm presence he'd known when the creature bowed its head to him. He seized it, willed it outward, pouring every ounce of strength he had into it. Light flared from his chest, golden and blinding. The shadow recoiled, its shape convulsing. The two halves, man and beast, were one again for a heartbeat. He saw it all, the Nunduin's birth in a foreign jungle, its capture by dark wizards, its agony under spells that tore its mind apart. He saw the girl Clara, chanting in the druid circle, her fear calling it forth once more. He saw himself standing before it, pity in his eyes. And in that shared heartbeat he understood. The creature's pain was not his own, it was his as well. Every wound the world had dealt him, every cruel whisper, every loss. It had carried that same sorrow. They were mirrors of each other, bound by more than magic. "I forgive you," Hagrid whispered. "Now forgive yourself." The shadow screamed, not in fury this time, but in release. Its form burst apart into thousands of sparks, each glowing faintly before fading into the night. When the last vanished, silence fell. Dawes lowered his wand, breathing hard. The clearing was still. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady. "Hagrid?" The half-giant stood unmoving, head bowed, His coat was scorched, his hair tangled, but when he lifted his face, his eyes were calm. "It's gone," he said simply. "Properly gone, this time." The Auror stared. You destroyed it?" "Nah," Hagrid said, shaking his head. "I let it rest." He swayed, exhaustion overtaking him, and Dawes hurried to his side. Together they began the long walk back toward the castle. By the time they reached the forest's edge, dawn was breaking, a pale light touching the mist and turning it to silver. Hagrid stopped, looking back one last time. The trees stood silent, their branches heavy with rain. No trace of the battle remained, but as the first sunlight filtered through the leaves, he thought he saw a faint shimmer of gold drift between them like dust caught in a beam of light. He smiled faintly. "Safe travels, old friend," he murmured. When he finally reached his hut, Fang bounded ahead and curled up beside the hearth. Hagrid sank into his chair, every muscle aching, but his heart, his single heart, beat steady and sure. Outside, the forest whispered softly, as if in gratitude, and far away, in some place beyond sight or spell, the Nunduin, whole once more, moved through the eternal wilds of magic, free at last, carrying with it the memory of a gentle half-giant who had dared to see the good in a monster. For in every creature, dark or bright, lies the choice to heal or to harm. And Hagrid, keeper of keys and protector of beasts, had once again chosen mercy. The weeks that followed passed in uneasy peace. The forbidden forest no longer trembled with dark magic, yet it did not forget. Its silence had changed. It was deeper now, older, as though the trees themselves were remembering what had occurred beneath their roots. Hagrid spent his days repairing what the battle had broken. Burned trees were tended with care, wards were restored, and frightened creatures coaxed back from hiding. The unicorn herd returned first, timid and pale, their hooves treading softly through the dew. To see them again filled Hagrid's heart with something like joy. Yet each night as he sat before the fire, the quiet pressed on him. The forest was too still. The Nunduin's absence was a wound he could not name. It was not sorrow exactly, nor loneliness, but something heavier, a sense that part of him had gone wandering beyond reach. Dawes visited often, still bound by duty to observe and report, though his tone had softened. "The ministry's satisfied," he said one evening, warming his hands at the fire. "No further sightings. No trace of unstable magic." "That's good," Hagrid said, though his eyes stayed on the window, where the edge of the forest stood black against a rising moon. "You should be proud," Dawes added. "You saved that forest, and maybe all of Hogwarts with it." Hagrid gave a grunt. "Ain't about pride, lad. It's about looking after what's yours. Them beasts, they don't have much else in the world but me." The Auror hesitated. "Still, you did what the ministry couldn't. That's something." But Hagrid only nodded. Words of glory or recognition never sat right with him. What mattered was that no one else had been harmed. Still, that night, when Dawes had gone and Fang snored by the hearth, Hagrid found himself stepping outside into the cold. The forest loomed before him, wrapped in silver mist. He felt the pull of it, faint but certain, a whisper deep in his chest, not the bond of magic, but memory. He followed the path by instinct, his lantern swaying, the light casting long shadows. The air smelled of rain and earth. Somewhere an owl hooted, and the ground sparkled faintly where droplets clung to moss. After a long walk, he came to the Druid circle once more. The runes upon the stones had faded, their power spent, but they still thrummed faintly with old magic, like embers refusing to die. Hagrid set down his lantern and stood among them. "You were right to go," he said quietly, as though the night itself were listening. "World's too full of folk who'd never understand you. But if ye can hear me out there, I hope you found somewhere peaceful." The wind stirred in response, gentle, almost kind. He could have sworn he saw a shimmer of gold pass between the trees, so faint he might have imagined it. Then behind him a new sound. Hooves on soft earth. Hagrid turned. Firenze stood at the edge of the clearing, moonlight glinting on his mane. "You speak to ghosts, Hagrid," said the centaur. "Maybe," Hagrid replied, his voice quiet, "but some ghosts deserve listening to." Firenze inclined his head. "The herd knows what you have done. You have restored balance. The forest breathes again." "That's so?" Hagrid said with a tired smile. "Glad to hear it. Never wanted any harm done, you know." "The stars remember mercy," Firenze said. "It shines longer than wrath." Hagrid chuckled softly. "You're a poet, Firenze." But the centaur's expression grew grave. "The creature's departure has left a void. Nature abhors emptiness. Something else will come to fill it." Hagrid frowned. "What do you mean, something else?" "The forest is alive," Firenze said. "It seeks balance as surely as the tide seeks the shore. When the Nunduin's power faded, the magic that once held it was released into the roots and stones. That energy is stirring. Be wary." With that, he turned and melted back into the trees, leaving Hagrid with unease crawling in his chest. He lingered a while longer, then started back toward the castle. Yet as he walked, the forest around him felt subtly wrong. The mist was thicker, and a hum ran through the air like the throb of a hidden drum. Once, he thought, he saw eyes glinting high among the branches, too high for any beast he knew. When he finally reached his hut, the first fingers of dawn touched the sky. He was exhausted, but his mind would not rest. He dreamed uneasily that night, of roots twisting through the castle's stone, of vines breaking through the floor of the great hall, and of eyes watching from the soil itself. The next morning, when he stepped outside, he saw that the ground near the forest edge was cracked. A faint green light pulsed beneath the soil, like something alive struggling to rise. "Not again," Hagrid muttered, kneeling to touch it. The glow flickered and vanished, leaving only damp earth behind. By midday, Dawes arrived, breathless. "Hagrid, there's something you need to see." He led Hagrid to the northern glade. There, half buried in mud, lay a stone, the same dark granite as those in the Druid circle, but newly risen, carved with fresh runes that pulsed faintly gold. Around it the grass had withered. Hagrid knelt beside it, tracing the markings with one finger. "That ain't natural." "It's spreading," Dawes said. "There are 3 others like it already. The centaurs say it's the forest trying to seal a wound." Hagrid's face hardened. "Or something trying to crawl out of one." For several days they watched as more stones surfaced, each glowing faintly. Nothing else stirred, yet the forest grew darker, its paths shifting in strange ways as though it were rearranging itself. One night a thunderclap woke Hagrid from uneasy dreams. He sat up to find Fang barking at the door. A light flickered outside, not fire, but a dull, golden shimmer that seemed to bleed through the trees. He grabbed his crossbow and stepped into the rain. The forest glowed faintly from within, every leaf edged in light. And then he heard it, soft, rhythmic, like the beat of a massive heart. From the depths came a sound that froze his blood, not a roar, but a voice. Hagrid. It was the Nunduin's voice, gentle, mournful, but distant, and layered beneath it was another deeper tone, like the groan of the earth itself. The ground trembled, one of the stones cracked, spilling golden light. Roots burst from the soil, twisting toward the sky. Hagrid staggered back, shielding his eyes as the light grew blinding. The storm raged around him, wind tearing at his coat. When the brilliance faded, the clearing lay transformed. The stones were gone, and in their place stood something vast and luminous, a figure of vines and light, half tree, half beast, its form shifting with every breath. Not the Nunduin reborn, but something new, something born of its passing. And though fear gripped him, Hagrid felt a strange recognition. The forest had indeed healed itself, but not as he had hoped. It had given its grief shape. Fang whimpered at his side, and Hagrid whispered, blast it all. Here we go again. The forest shuddered, alive and waiting, and as lightning cracked above, Hagrid squared his shoulders, ready once more to face the price of mercy and the wild heart of the forbidden forest that would never truly sleep. Dawn bled slowly across the Scottish hills, but the light did not reach far beneath the trees. The forbidden forest was alive again, yet not as it had been. Its heart had changed. Strange vines shimmered faintly in the undergrowth, pulsing with threads of gold like veins of living fire. Trees bent as though listening to voices beneath the soil. The air hummed, not with menace, but with restless power, like a song seeking its own end. Hagrid moved through the mist as quietly as his size would allow, his lantern dimmed to a red glow. Fang padded close, muzzle low, uneasy. "Easy now, boy," Hagrid murmured. "It's just the forest breathing different. Don't mean it's evil." But even as he spoke, his voice faltered. All around him the roots seemed to twitch at his passing. He could feel it. The forest was aware of him. It wasn't hostile, not yet, but it was watching. He reached the glade where the creature of light had appeared the night before. The soil there still shimmered faintly, runes etched into the earth like scars. Hagrid knelt, brushing aside the damp moss, and whispered, "What are you then?" No answer came, only the soft sigh of wind through the branches. Then faint and low, a rumble shook the ground. Fang barked sharply, tail between his legs. Hagrid rose, gripping his crossbow. The sound deepened, spreading through the earth like thunder, rolling underground. Leaves trembled loose from the trees, swirling through the air, and from beneath the soil something stirred. The earth split in a circle before him. Roots coiled upward, weaving themselves together, and within moments a shape emerged, tall, luminous, and strange. It stood on 4 legs like a stag, yet its body glimmered with green and gold light, its skin shifting between bark and mist. 2 eyes opened, pale and endless. Hagrid took a step back, awed despite himself. "By Merlin." The creature tilted its head. When it spoke, the voice was soft, layered, echoing both male and female tones. "Guardian." Hagrid froze. "You can talk?" The being's eyes glowed brighter. "All the Grows can speak if there is one who listens." He swallowed. "Are you the forest?" "I am its memory," it said. "The echo of what was broken, the seed of what must heal." Understanding came slowly. The Nunduin's death had left behind more than energy. It had given the forest consciousness. The magic it carried had seeped into every root, every branch, until the land itself had woken. "Then ye ain't here to hurt anyone?" Hagrid asked. The light dimmed. Pain lingers in the soil. Creatures still fear what they cannot name. Balance has not yet returned. "Maybe I can help," he said. Done it before, haven't I? The forest listens to me sometimes. You carry mercy, the being murmured. That is why the creature chose you. But mercy alone cannot bind what is wild. Before he could answer, another voice echoed from the shadows. Hagrid! Dawes stumbled into the clearing, wand drawn, eyes wide. Merlin's beard. What is that? The luminous being turned its gaze toward him, and the forest darkened in response. Don't! Hagrid shouted. It ain't hostile. But Dawes's instincts were faster than his faith. He raised his wand, murmuring a containment charm. The light creature recoiled as the spell flared around it, sparks skimming its flank. The golden glow pulsed red for an instant, and a low, pained roar filled the glade. Stop! Hagrid bellowed, knocking Dawes's arm aside. You're scaring it. It's draining magic from the ground, Dawes shouted back. Can't you feel that? Hagrid hesitated. He could feel it, the pull of energy through the soil, like the forest itself was breathing too fast. The creature's glow wavered, its form flickering between light and shadow. I can't stop what I am, it said. The magic seeks to mend itself. Then let it mend, Hagrid said. Don't fight it. But the forest around them was unraveling. Vines lashed from the trees, roots tearing from the earth. The being cried out, and the sound made Hagrid's heart twist. It was not anger, but pain. Dawes shouted over the chaos. If it keeps drawing power like that, it'll tear the whole forest apart. There's another way, Hagrid said through gritted teeth. There's always another way. He pushed past the thrashing roots, approaching the creature. Its eyes met his, and for a heartbeat, he felt the same warmth he'd known when he touched the Nunduin's mind. Listen, he said quietly. I know what you're feeling. Loss, confusion. But there's peace too, somewhere in all this. You've just got to find it. The creature's breathing slowed. The red light faded back to gold. Around them, the storm of roots calmed, retreating into the soil. Dawes lowered his wand, panting. What did you do? Hagrid smiled faintly. Didn't do anything special. Just reminded it that not everything alive has to fight. The being bowed its great head. You understand, it said. You remember. And with that, its body began to dissolve. The light rose in threads, drifting upward into the canopy. The trees absorbed it, their leaves shimmering faintly before returning to stillness. When the last spark vanished, only the runes in the soil remained. It's gone, Dawes whispered. Nah, Hagrid said softly. Not gone, just part of the forest now. He sank to one knee, pressing a hand to the earth. Beneath his palm, he felt warmth, not threatening but steady, the heartbeat of the forest. Guess it's awake for good, he murmured. Best we make sure it stays friendly. Dawes gave a weak laugh. Only you could look at an ancient, magical consciousness and think of befriending it. Someone's got to, Hagrid said, rising heavily. Can't have it feeling lonely. They began the long walk back through the woods. Dawn had fully broken now, spilling gold through the leaves. Birds sang again. The air smelled clean, almost new. As they neared the castle, Dawes paused. What will you tell McGonagall? Hagrid grinned. Tell her the forest sorted itself out. No need for the Ministry's meddling. Just a bit of natural magic, that's all. Dawes looked back once more, unease flickering across his face. Natural, you say? Hagrid followed his gaze. In the distance, deep within the forest, a faint golden shimmer glowed beneath the trees, steady as a heartbeat. He smiled. Aye, he said softly. Natural enough. The wind stirred then, carrying with it a whisper through the leaves. Half words, half song. Hagrid didn't understand the language, but the feeling it brought was clear. Peace, gratitude, and promise. The forest had changed forever, but it was alive again, wiser and whole. And Hagrid, keeper of keys and guardian of beasts, felt its new heart beating in time with his own. He turned toward the rising sun, the day bright upon his face, and said with a small, proud smile, "Well, that's another creature made a friend to Hogwarts, I reckon." And somewhere in the forest's depths, a golden light flickered in answer, as though in agreement, its quiet voice blending with the wind, the leaves, and the endless song of the wild. Autumn deepened its hold over the Scottish Highlands, and the air around Hogwarts grew sharp with chill. Leaves turned copper and crimson, spinning down from the beech trees in lazy spirals. The Forbidden Forest, however, did not follow the rhythm of the season. Its colors were stranger, green where there should have been gold, silver where shadows should have lain. A quiet light moved through its heart, faint as breath, a lingering mark of the power that had woken beneath its roots. Hagrid watched the forest daily from his hut window. He told the professors it was calm now, that the strange lights were nothing to worry about, but he knew better. The forest was alive in a way it had never been before. Sometimes at night he could hear it sighing, trees bending without wind, roots shifting in the dark, like the earth itself was turning in its sleep. Fang seemed to sense it too. The great boarhound refused to go near the tree line, whining softly whenever the breeze carried the scent of pine. "Can't blame you, lad," Hagrid muttered, ruffling the dog's ears. "Whole place feels different, don't it? Like it's waiting for something." It was on one such misty evening that Dawes returned. He had been gone nearly a fortnight, summoned to London to make his report to the ministry. Hagrid had half expected never to see him again, but there he was, mud-splattered, weary-eyed, and grim. "They didn't believe half of it," Dawes said the moment Hagrid opened the door. "Said my account read like a fairy tale." Hagrid chuckled. "Ain't far from the truth, though, is it?" Dawes sighed, sinking into the chair by the fire. "They've decided to close the investigation. Officially, they're calling it an unclassified magical surge resulting from natural convergence. That's the ministry's way of saying they've no idea what happened and they'd rather not know." "Better that way," Hagrid said, setting a tankard in front of him. "The less they meddle, the safer the forest'll be." The Auror stared into the flames. "Do you really believe it's safe now?" Hagrid hesitated. "Safe enough," he said at last. "The forest's got a will of its own. Always did. It's just louder now." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the wind howled against the walls, and somewhere in the distance, the faint cry of a centaur echoed between the trees. When the fire burned low, Dawes rose to leave. At the door, he paused. "If anything stirs again, anything at all, you'll owl me?" Hagrid smiled wearily. "Course I will, lad. But I've a feeling whatever's waking out there ain't angry no more. It's just alive." Dawes nodded, though the uncertainty in his eyes lingered. After he left, the night stretched long and quiet. Hagrid dozed in his chair, Fang snoring beside him, the fire burning down to embers. It was near midnight when a faint glow brushed the window. He opened his eyes and froze. A soft golden light pulsed through the fog outside, threading between the trees like fireflies in flight. He rose, heart quickening. The lantern on his table flickered, answering the strange rhythm of the light. "Not again," he murmured, though his feet were already carrying him to the door. The moment he stepped outside, the mist wrapped around him, cold and damp. The glow deepened, forming a faint trail through the grass. It led not toward the heart of the forest this time, but uphill, toward Hogwarts. Hagrid followed, every instinct on edge. His boots crunched over frost-hardened soil. The light moved steadily, almost playfully, darting ahead whenever he drew too near. It led him to the edge of the castle grounds, to the old stone bridge that crossed the ravine. There, standing in the middle of it, was a figure made of light. At first, he thought it was the Nunduin, tall, radiant. But as he drew closer, he saw it was something else entirely. It had the shape of a man cloaked in gold mist, but its face shifted constantly, sometimes old, sometimes young, sometimes neither. Hagrid stopped, heart hammering. Who are you supposed to be?" The figure tilted its head. When it spoke, the voice was soft and echoing, like water in a cavern. "The forest remembers gratitude. It sent me." "Sent you?" "The life you saved has not forgotten you, Keeper," said the being. "The Nunduin's essence lingers beyond form. Its mercy has taken root in the heart of the land, and it has made me its voice." Hagrid's breath caught. "It's alive? Somewhere out there?" "Not as it was," said the being. "But its spirit thrives. Every creature that walks beneath those trees now carries a spark of its gift. They are bound by peace. Yet peace is fragile." The words chilled him. "What do you mean?" "Change comes with every season. Darkness, too, will seek its balance." The being's gaze turned toward the forest. "The soil has tasted magic. It will hunger for it again." "So what am I supposed to do?" The light flickered, its form dimming. "Guard it, guide it. The forest knows your name. When it calls, you must answer." Before he could speak, the wind rose in a sudden gust, scattering the mist. The figure dissolved into threads of gold that spiraled upward into the night. Hagrid stood alone on the bridge, staring after it until the last glimmer vanished. "Guard it, he says," he muttered, shaking his head, "as if I don't already have enough on me plate." But there was no anger in his tone, only weary wonder. He turned back toward his hut. Behind him the forest stretched dark and endless, but somewhere deep within its depths, a single faint glow pulsed in answer, steady and calm. Over the following days he noticed small things. The unicorns no longer fled at the sight of him. The centaurs bowed their heads when he passed. Even the acromantulas kept to their dens. The forest had accepted him, not just as its warden, but as part of itself. One evening, while he fed the hippogriffs, he caught a glint of gold between the trees. A tiny creature, no larger than a fox, watched him with eyes like amber. It looked half spirit, half flesh, its fur shimmering with faint light. When he met its gaze, he felt warmth bloom in his chest. "Ah," he said softly, smiling, "so that's how it is. You're one of his kin, aren't you?" The creature tilted its head, then vanished soundlessly into the forest. That night, Hagrid wrote a letter to McGonagall, headmistress. The forest's peaceful now, but different. There's new magic growing in the soil. It ain't dangerous, not yet. Feels more like it's finding its place. I'll keep watch, like always. He sealed it with wax and sent it with a school owl, then stood for a long time at the window, watching the moonlight drift across the trees. The forbidden forest was quiet again, but its heart beat in rhythm with his own. He could feel it, steady, strong, alive, and deep within, a whisper rode the wind, faint but clear. Guardian, he smiled, his great shoulders relaxing. "Aye," he said softly, "I'll keep guard." And so he did, as autumn gave way to winter, and snow fell heavy over the castle. Beneath that blanket of white, the forest slept, dreaming golden dreams. And somewhere, in the deep roots of the world, the echo of a forgotten creature purred like a heartbeat, safe, eternal, and free. Winter laid its claim upon the castle grounds. Snow blanketed the forbidden forest, muting its wild noises, turning its dark canopy into a cathedral of white. The lake froze at its edges, and the air was so sharp it seemed to crack when one breathed too quickly. For most at Hogwarts, the season brought comfort. Roaring fires, laughter in the great hall, mugs of hot pumpkin juice. But for Hagrid, winter was a restless time. The forest never slept easily, even beneath the snow. He walked its borders each dawn, boots crunching on frost, his breath rising like smoke. The trees loomed in silence, but not lifeless silence. Something listened beneath the surface, patient and vast. One morning he paused at a place he knew well, the Druid Circle. The stones were almost buried now, only the tops showing above the snowdrifts, and the runes had dimmed to faint shadows. He brushed the frost from one, and for a heartbeat, a flicker of gold glowed under his touch. "Aye," he said softly. "Still in there, aren't you? Sleeping, maybe." Fang gave a low bark, his breath fogging the air. From deeper in the trees came the faint echo of something moving, hoofbeats, soft and rhythmic. A moment later, Firenze emerged, his coat gleaming silver in the pale light. "Hagrid," the centaur greeted, bowing his head. "You keep your vigil still." "Someone's got to," Hagrid said, smiling faintly. "Forest feels quiet, but I don't trust quiet. Too much like holding your breath." "The stars agree," Firenze said gravely. "They shift in strange patterns this winter. Power still flows beneath these woods, though it hides its face." "That so?" Hagrid rubbed at his beard. "I thought after all that mess last season things would settle." Firenze's blue eyes lifted toward the paling sky. "Magic never settles. It only changes its shape." The words left Hagrid uneasy. "You reckon the forest'll wake something else?" The centaur did not answer at once. His gaze turned toward the east, where the first hint of dawn gleamed on the snow. "Something old moves beneath the frost, not born of the creature you knew, but kin to its memory. The earth has long memory, Hagrid. It never forgets mercy, nor grief." Then, as if hearing something unseen, Firenze's ears twitched. "I must go," he said suddenly. "The herd calls. Be wary. The forest may love you, but even love can wound when it grows wild." He turned and galloped away, leaving only hoofprints in the snow. Hagrid stood for a while, frowning. The forest looked still enough, but he could not shake the feeling that something breathed beneath it. That night, as wind howled down from the mountains, the feeling returned stronger. The fire in his hearth flickered, dimmed, then flared again, though no draft touched it. Fang growled low, hackles rising. "What's wrong, boy?" Hagrid asked, rising from his chair. A soft sound came from outside, a faint humming, not quite music, not quite voice. It drifted through the walls, growing stronger. The very air seemed to shimmer. He opened the door and stepped into the night. The snow had stopped falling, and the moon hung full and white above the treetops. The forest glowed faintly under its light, gold and silver mingling like breath on glass. Then, out from between the trees, something stepped forth. It was small, no larger than a pony, but radiant, its fur pale as moonlight, its eyes deep pools of amber. Around its neck shimmered a faint halo of mist. It bowed its head toward Hagrid. "Blimey," he breathed. "You're one of them, aren't you?" The forest's new kind. The creature's gaze met his, and he felt warmth flood through him, not just in his skin but deeper, into his very bones. A wordless understanding passed between them. He knelt slowly. "You're the forest's way of remembering him, aren't you? The Nunduin?" The creature blinked once, and the faint golden shimmer around it brightened as if in assent. It stepped closer, brushing its muzzle against his hand. The touch left a faint trail of warmth, a spark that sank into his skin. For an instant he felt again that long-vanished presence, the deep, ancient heartbeat that had once echoed with his own. Then, without warning, the creature turned its head sharply toward the forest. Its ears twitched, its body tensed. "What is it?" Hagrid whispered. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it a whisper like distant speech. Beneath the snow, something cracked, quiet but vast. The ground trembled just once. The creature's eyes flared gold. Then it bolted into the trees. "Wait!" Hagrid shouted, stumbling after it. Fang barked wildly and followed. They crashed through the drifts, the forest growing darker the deeper they ran. The glow ahead bobbed and darted like a will-o'-the-wisp. Then it stopped abruptly in a small hollow, ringed with ice-covered roots. Hagrid burst into the clearing and froze. The snow there was disturbed, heaving upward as though the ground itself were breathing. Cracks spread in a wide circle, light bleeding through them. It wasn't gold this time, but pale blue, cold, otherworldly. The little luminous creature pawed at the ground and looked back at Hagrid, eyes wide with fear. "All right, easy now," he murmured, stepping closer. "Whatever's down there, we'll deal with it." The light intensified. With a deafening crack, the earth split open. A blast of icy air roared upward, scattering snow and branches. Hagrid threw an arm over his face. When he lowered it again, a shape was rising from the rift. It was like ice given life, translucent, crystalline, but moving with terrible grace. Its body shimmered with frozen light, and from its maw drifted fog colder than death. Two eyes, white and endless, fixed upon him. The creature beside Hagrid let out a thin, keening cry and vanished into mist. "Ah, no," Hagrid whispered, "not again." The ice beast stepped forward, its claws sinking into the earth. Its voice was a whisper like shattering glass. "Guardian." He felt the word strike through him like a curse. The same word the forest had used before, but now it sounded hollow, wrong. "I don't know what ye are," Hagrid said quietly, "but if you're looking for trouble, ye found it." He raised his crossbow, though he knew it would do little good. The being moved closer. "The warmth must die," it hissed. "The balance demands cold." Then it lunged. The forest erupted into chaos. Trees split as frost raced up their trunks. The very air froze where its breath passed. Hagrid ducked behind a fallen log, shards of ice slicing through his coat. Fang barked, then yelped as frost bit at his paws. "Back to the hut, Fang," Hagrid roared. "Go on, boy." The dog hesitated, then fled. Hagrid turned back to the creature, teeth gritted. "So that's it then," he muttered. "Forest gives life 1 month and takes it the next." He raised his crossbow again, but the ice beast was already fading, dissolving into a mist of snowflakes. Its voice lingered, whispering through the trees. "The forest remembers all things." even the cold. Then it was gone. The clearing lay still. Snow drifted down gently over the cracked earth. Hagrid stood alone, heart hammering, breath clouding the air. He looked down at the glowing fissure. The blue light was dimming now, fading back into the soil. Yet deep within, something still pulsed, a rhythm not of life but of sleep. He sighed heavily. Well, that's that, I suppose. Just when I thought I'd earned a quiet winter. He trudged back toward his hut, muttering under his breath. Forest never gives a fella a rest, does it? But behind him, under the snow, a faint frost spread outward like fingers reaching for the trees. The forbidden forest was changing again, and this time its dreams were cold. Days passed beneath the iron sky of winter. The snow thickened, muffling the world, cloaking the forest in silence so deep it seemed time itself had slowed. Yet beneath that quiet, a new unease crept into the heart of the forbidden forest. The centaurs felt it first. They whispered in tones of dread, their hooves restless on frozen ground. The stars, they said, had shifted, small movements that foretold imbalance. A cold power, born from the earth's grief, had begun to stir. Hagrid heard the whispers when he visited their camp at dawn. The frost glittered on Firenze's mane as he approached him. It comes from below, the centaur said gravely. The forest breathes, but its breath freezes. The roots ache. I know, Hagrid murmured, rubbing his gloved hands together. I saw it, Firenze. Something came up from the ground that shouldn't have. Ice light, like the forest's dreams have gone wrong. The stars have little pity for such dreams, Firenze said. Something must be done before spring returns. If warmth finds this coldness still rooted here, they will war, and Hogwarts lies between them. Then I'll deal with it, Hagrid said firmly. Ain't letting the forest tear itself apart. Not while I've breath. The centaur's gaze was unreadable. Beware, Hagrid. The forest listens to you, but it does not always obey. When he left, the snow had begun again, soft flakes falling like ash. The path to his hut was half buried by the time he returned, and the air hummed with a tension he could not name. Even Fang refused to cross the threshold into the forest that night. But Hagrid did. He carried only a lantern and a great oaken staff carved with runes. The glow of its head cut a narrow circle through the misting snow. All right, he muttered, his breath fogging the air. Let's see what you're up to, then. He followed the trail to the hollow where the ice beast had risen. The fissure was sealed now, buried under a crust of frozen earth, but the trees around it glistened with a sheen of frost that did not melt even beneath the lantern light. Each branch seemed alive with veins of pale blue, pulsing faintly as though the forest had been caught mid-breath. Hagrid crouched and pressed his palm to the ground. Cold burned through his glove. Beneath the surface he could feel a rhythm, not a heartbeat this time, but something slower, heavier. The forest was dreaming again, but its dreams were wrong. He straightened. All right, he said aloud. I'm here. Whatever ye are, talk to me. Don't hide in the dirt. The wind stirred, whispering through the branches. Snow shifted on the boughs and fell in quiet cascades. Then from the darkness between the trees, a figure began to form, a shimmer of frost and light. It was not the same creature as before. This one was smaller, more human-shaped, though its body glowed with the same pale hue as the ice that coated the forest. Its eyes were hollow, but within them swirled an ancient stillness. Hagrid raised his lantern higher. What do you want? The voice that answered was neither male nor female, but 1,000 soft tones layered together. "To rest," it whispered, "but warmth will not let me. The forest grieves its change." "Change ain't a bad thing," Hagrid said. "It means life's going on." "Life burns," the spirit said. "The golden fire devours what it touches. Once I was part of that warmth. Now I am what remains when the light fades." Understanding struck him like a blow. "You're what's left of the Nunduin," he said softly. "The cold half, the part that wouldn't let go." The spirit inclined its head. "I am memory without mercy. I am the silence that follows mercy's end." "Well," Hagrid said, tightening his grip on the staff, "we can't have you freezing the whole forest just 'cause you're sad." The air trembled. Frost crept up the trunks of the trees, spreading like spider webs. "I do not seek to harm," the voice said, "but the warmth rejects me. The soil remembers the fire of gold, not the calm of ice. It burns beneath me." Hagrid took a careful step forward. "Then maybe you don't have to choose. The forest's big enough for both of you. Warmth and cold, life and rest. It's all part of the same." The spirit hesitated. The frost stopped spreading. For a moment, Hagrid thought he saw something in its hollow gaze. Confusion, maybe even longing. But then the earth shuddered beneath his feet. A crack split the frozen ground, and blue light spilled upward. The trees groaned as ice thickened on their bark. "The forest cannot hold both," the spirit said. "Its roots break beneath the weight." "Then I'll hold it," Hagrid shouted. "If that's what it takes, I'll keep the balance myself." He slammed the staff into the ground. The runes along its length flared with golden light, the old protective charm McGonagall had given him when he had first become Keeper of Keys. The warmth poured outward, meeting the frost in a burst of blinding light. The forest screamed, not in pain but in awakening. The trees shook, their branches shedding snow like feathers. Sparks of gold and blue danced through the air, weaving together until they formed a single shimmering wave that rippled across the clearing. When the light faded, Hagrid was on his knees, breathless. The spirit was gone. The frost melted from the trees, leaving only damp bark behind. Above, the stars glimmered through a break in the clouds. He rose slowly, leaning on his staff. His breath still steamed in the air, but it no longer burned with cold. The forest around him was quiet, no longer deathly silent, but resting, like a beast that had found peace at last. "Reckon that'll do," he murmured. As he turned back toward the castle, a soft glow followed him for a few steps, then faded into the snow. A whisper lingered in his ears, faint as wind through reeds. Balance kept, guardian remembered. By dawn, the snow had ceased. The forest stood calm, its trees heavy with dew that gleamed like glass in the first light of morning. The centaurs watched from afar, their faces unreadable, but when Hagrid passed, Firenze bowed his head. "Harmony returns," he said. "You have done what even the stars doubted could be done." Hagrid scratched his beard awkwardly. "Just gave the forest a talking to, is all." "Perhaps," Firenze said, "but sometimes the simplest acts echo loudest in eternity." He turned and vanished into the mist. Hagrid looked up at the treetops, the dawn spilling gold through the branches. For the first time in months, he felt truly still. The forest was breathing with him, not against him. He smiled, patting the nearest tree. "There now," he said softly. "All sorted, eh?" From somewhere deep within, a faint warmth stirred in reply, and so the forest slept, balanced between frost and flame, under the watchful eyes of its guardian. Spring came late to the Scottish Highlands that year. The snow withdrew reluctantly, melting in slow silver threads that trickled down from the hills into the lake. The forbidden forest drank deeply of that thaw, its soil dark and rich, its branches stretching like waking limbs after a long sleep. Yet though it looked alive once more, its heart remained quiet. Too quiet. Hagrid knew the difference between a forest at peace and one merely resting. The trees stood still in the wind as though listening for something that never came. No bird song echoed beneath the canopy. The air felt thick with memory. He walked the paths daily, boots sinking in the damp moss, Fang padding beside him. The little luminous creatures, offspring of the Nunduin's lingering magic, followed from a distance, their eyes like soft lanterns in the shadows. They watched him work, curious and wordless, as he checked the traps, mended the fences, and spoke aloud to the trees as though to old friends. "All right," he would mutter. "Roots look healthy, ground's thawing fine, nothing nasty about." But still his voice would lower, gentler, as if the forest itself were listening. "You did good, you know. Forest's stronger now. Don't reckon I could have done it without you." The wind would stir then, faint and low, and sometimes he thought he heard words in it. Not clear ones, just a rhythm, like breathing. The voice of the forest. Hagrid began to sleep again, though dreams often woke him before dawn, dreams of light and frost, of gold, meeting blue in a sky without end. He would wake to find Fang pressing close to his leg, whining softly. The dreams didn't frighten him anymore. They only left him wondering. Then one night near the end of April, a new sound came from the woods. Not the crack of branches, nor the low calls of centaurs, but a steady, deep pulse, like the heartbeat of the earth. It drew him from his hut before he knew it, lantern in hand, his breath misting in the cool night air. He followed it to the druid circle. The stones glowed faintly once more, gold lines tracing the old runes. Between them, new growth had begun. Vines pale as moonlight, curling like silver threads through the moss. At their center bloomed a single flower, white and luminous, its petals unfurling as he approached. "Merlin's beard," Hagrid whispered. "What are you then?" The flower pulsed softly, keeping time with that unseen heartbeat. It wasn't merely alive, it was aware. Hagrid knelt beside it, careful not to touch. "You're the forest's heart now, aren't you? The new one." As he spoke, warmth flooded through the clearing. The vines shivered and the glow brightened until he had to squint against it. When it dimmed again, a figure stood where the flower had been. Small, delicate, and human-shaped, woven entirely of light and living vine. Its eyes were gentle, green as spring leaves. "Guardian," it said. Hagrid stared, lost for words. "Not again," he managed at last. "I was just getting used to a quiet year." The figure smiled faintly. "You have done what few could, mended what was broken. The forest remembers." He swallowed. "Are ya the Nunduin again?" "I am what remains of all that came before," it said. "The warmth, the cold, the sorrow, the hope, all have taken root. The forest has chosen its voice. And you're it? For now." The figure's gaze drifted upward to the moonlit canopy, but voices fade. The song continues. Hagrid shifted uneasily. "Well, I ain't much for singing, but I'll keep taking care of things, same as always." The being tilted its head as though amused. "You will not be alone, Guardian. The forest walks with you now. When you speak, it hears. When you hurt, it heals. When you fall, it will rise." "That sounds like more responsibility than I fancy," Hagrid said. but his voice was soft with wonder. The figure's light shimmered, growing fainter. The balance endures because of mercy. Never forget that mercy is strength. And with that, it vanished, dissolving into petals that scattered across the clearing like starlight. The vines wilted, leaving only the faint outline of roots that shimmered briefly before sinking into the soil. Hagrid stood a long while, lantern forgotten at his side. The wind sighed through the trees, and this time it carried warmth, the kind that smelled of spring rain and growing things. When he finally returned to his hut, dawn was breaking. He fed Fang, made himself tea, and sat watching the light spill over the lake. The castle glittered in the distance, its towers catching the sun. It was a good morning, the first truly good one in many months. As the weeks passed, the forest changed again, quietly but unmistakably. Flowers bloomed where frost had once lingered. The centaurs moved through the glades without fear. Even the unicorns returned to their old trails, their silver coats gleaming between the trees. One afternoon, as Hagrid mended a fence by the pumpkin patch, Professor McGonagall came down the path, her tartan cloak fluttering in the breeze. "You've done fine work, Hagrid," she said, looking toward the forest. "It seems happier somehow." He smiled beneath his beard. "Aye, forest needed a bit of peace is all, same as the rest of us." She studied him for a long moment, eyes softening. "Peace, yes, you've earned that." When she left, he turned back toward the tree line. The wind rustled through the branches, and for a moment he thought he saw movement, a tall golden shape walking between the trees. It looked back once, its eyes glimmering green, then vanished into the light. Hagrid chuckled softly. "Always watching, eh? Well, that's fine by me. Someone's got to keep me out of trouble." He slung his tools over his shoulder and started for home. That night, as stars bloomed above the castle, the forest whispered softly in the dark. A song of balance, of light and shadow, of endings that were not endings at all. Hagrid sat by his fire, Fang asleep beside him, and listened. The world beyond the castle would never know what had taken place in those woods, the creature that had been born, the battle that had been fought, the bond that had changed the heart of the forest itself. But the land remembered, the roots remembered, and somewhere deep beneath the earth where gold met frost and the first leaves of spring unfurled, a slow heartbeat continued, a promise that mercy, once given, never truly dies. Hagrid leaned back in his chair, the fire crackling softly, and smiled to himself. "Aye," he murmured, "that's the way of things. Always was, always will be." The forest outside sighed in agreement, and the night settled gentle and whole once more over Hogwarts and its guardian.